Hey folks, it's David Stewart here, your friendly neighborhood cyborg, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about hearing loss and how you can prevent hearing loss. This is my hearing aid. It is a bone-anchored hearing system. It's made by Oticon Medical. It's quite a cool device. I'm very lucky to have it. I am a musician with hearing loss, which is actually not that rare. Almost every musician I've met who's been in the industry more than about 5 or 10 years, particularly in the pop music industry, has either mild or moderate hearing loss to some degree. It comes with the territory because there's so much noise exposure, and that's one of the ways that you can damage your hearing. Now, that's not the way that I lost my hearing in my right ear. I lost it due to a childhood disease that occurred really before I was 2, and I've only just recently been able to correct that with this device, which is actually implanted into my, it clips onto an implant that's drilled into my skull and provides the hearing that way. I have what's called conductive hearing loss, which means the bones in my middle ear are not conducting sound properly, so we just go around those by going through the skull. I do have some hearing loss in my left ear that's due to sound exposure, like most musicians, but it's pretty mild. And it's pretty mild because I've taken a lot of steps to prevent a lot of hearing loss. About 20% of Americans have hearing loss. I actually expect that number to rise over the next years. And the reason is because the population's getting older, and that's one of the first ways that you lose hearing is you get older. As you get older, changes in your inner ear happen, and those high frequencies start to get dialed off. You start to lose your hearing. The other way is through sound exposure, like most musicians have. But musicians are not the only people with sound exposure issues, nor are, artillery sergeants. Lots of people have sound exposure issues because we live in a very noisy environment. And that's the other reason that I think that 20% number will go up over the next decades. Young people today live in a noisier environment than their parents did, and they subject themselves to more hazardous noise probably without realizing it. So if you can prevent hearing loss, that's a great thing to do, rather than hoping that you have a device to help make up your hearing loss later on, which I need for medical reasons. If you prevent the hearing loss, then you never need it. And the thing about hearing loss is that it doesn't come back. The neurosensory hearing loss, which is the sound exposure hearing loss and the hearing loss due to age, doesn't come back. If you spend a week listening to loud music and deafening yourself, like going on some metal music tour and listening without any kind of hearing protection, going and spending a week in the quiet woods will not bring your hearing back to you. You will have lost your hearing, and it doesn't really come back. You may be more attentive to sounds, but you won't get your hearing back. So it's really important to prevent it. And there's 2 really easy ways. The second one will surprise you. The first one is wear earplugs. Wear earplugs or earmuffs, and you probably need to wear them in a lot more places and circumstances than you would think. Everybody puts on their earmuffs when they go to the shooting range and goes shooting, right? Because you know that guns are loud. Very few people put on their earmuffs or their earplugs when they go to a concert, when they go to a live concert. But live concerts, the sound reproduced at them is often much too loud for hearing. Anything that's like 70 decibels plus is really pretty dangerous for your hearing, and that's most live music. So you should bring earplugs if you're going to go see live music, particularly if it's like a loud rock show. These tend to be up at 90 decibels plus, which is really unsafe for your hearing. You need to wear earplugs to prevent that. The other thing is, if you're using a lawnmower, that's usually loud enough in front of you that it can damage your hearing over time. If you happen to work in landscaping and you have a lawnmower you take to jobs, you need to wear earmuffs when you're using the lawnmower, the weed whacker, the leaf blower. Those long droning noises of single frequencies happening for long periods of time can be really damaging to your hearing. So wear your earplugs. If you're running your vacuum, wear earplugs. I know that sounds weird, but I'm just going to vacuum for 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes adds up over the years to hours and hours of noise exposure. That's a little bit louder than what it needs to be. So just put on your earmuffs, and they have earmuffs now that even plug in as headphones, so you could listen to something while you have your earmuffs on. Wear earplugs. Wear them more often than you think. I carry earplugs with me everywhere. Of course, I only need one because this is the only ear that I can hear normally out of. So just pop an earplug in there when it's uncomfortable. And don't be afraid to plug your ears if you're like at the fireworks show. So most people don't take enough care to wear hearing protection. Hearing protection is the big one. The second one I mentioned, you're going to be surprised about, but get better headphones. Get better audio equipment. I know this sounds a little bit weird, but this is something I've noticed with young people and sort of the prevalence of smartphones, and that is these things right here, earbuds. These are not good for listening to music, and they're not usually good for your hearing. And they're bad for your hearing in a way that I've discovered. This is mostly my anecdotal experience, but it might jive with yours, is that most people I know, including myself, when you put the earbuds in, you crank the volume on your phone all the way up to max. It's at the loudest it can go, and you still can't quite hear the music. And in fact, phones are often a little bit too quiet to drive a lot of good headphones, which is another matter entirely. But you have them cranked up really loud, and in some cases it's uncomfortably loud, but you still are not hearing what you want from the music. So what I notice is people tend to play with their earbuds up at maximum volume so they can hear the details in the music that they actually want to hear. And I think that's mostly has to do with the mid-range frequencies. Earbuds are really good at producing high-range frequencies, and if you get ones like this that have the little rubber cups that block off the ear canal, they're decent at low-range frequencies because they create a baffle. You have this closed airspace that's just kind of bouncing the air around between your tympanic membrane and the speaker driver. But they're really bad at producing mid-range frequencies. Mid-range is where the real power of the voice is. The power of the voice is in the mid-range frequencies, and the low frequencies are kind of go through everything. You were hearing protection and you're still going to hear low range frequencies. High range frequencies are where you tend to go deaf. And those are the frequencies, incidentally, where speech is at. So as you lose hearing, you tend to lose hearing in the upper registers, the high-pitched sounds, which is where most of speech is. The sound of S starts to fade, and then it's harder to understand what people are saying. The intelligibility goes down. You lose your ability to understand what people are saying and communicate effectively. And that's what you really want to avoid. So if you get better headphones, if you get big cans, right? Big cans are actually going to be way better for your hearing than the little earbuds. And yeah, you may look like a hipster with big headphones on the subway or something, but your ears will thank you. And the reason that these are better is because at the same amount of power driving them, they're producing a more accurate representation of the sound of what you're trying to hear, a more accurate representation of the music, particularly in the mid frequencies, which means you don't have to listen to it as loud. You don't have to crank it up so loud that the high-pitched cymbals are blasting in your ears and hurting your ears. You can have it at a moderate volume and clearly hear all the parts of the music. So better headphones, believe it or not, will help save your hearing in the long run. It's a case for more expensive equipment because you won't have to crank it up loud to hear those mid-range details. You'll get to hear all the details right away. And if you've never used a really good set of headphones, you'd be surprised the number of people who've never put on like $100 set of headphones and really heard what they sound like. If you've never used really good headphones, you'll know the difference when you get them. And it's one of my essential pieces of equipment for beginning musicians. They have a good set of headphones that are accurately going to reproduce music for you. So those are the two ways that I feel like can help most people avoid a lot of hearing loss. And if you can avoid the hearing loss, that's far better than trying to correct it later on. So let me know if you have some other ways to avoid hearing loss. Not everyone who has hearing loss is like an artillery sergeant or works at the airport or is a musician. Lots of everyday people can have hearing loss for a whole bunch of reasons, but that sound exposure one, that's the one that is totally within your power to prevent. And I hope that you will think a little bit critically about doing that. If you go to the loud, heavy metal concert, bring earplugs. You're the guy with earplugs. If you can't stand the way the music sounds with the earplugs, skip the live concert. It's just not really worth your hearing to go to live concerts and lose your ability to hear the music at all. Okay, so that's all I have to say about that. I appreciate it. You can find more of me at davidvstewart.com. Of course, if you want to support me on Patreon, patreon.com/davidvstewart. Find me on Twitter at davidvstewart, Gab, David V. Stewart. I'm pretty much David V. Stewart on everything except Facebook. I'm /David Van Dyke Stewart. So thanks so much, and I will see you guys next time.